Hello and welcome back, and that's right, today we want to return to the brand Charge and talk about an upgrade to a storage device that a number of you have probably seen me utilising in and about different trade shows for the last year or two. This was the Charge Disk Pro, a pre-populated external docking station that you could connect to your mobile device, connect to your desktop device. It was one of the smallest docking stations I've ever used. It had 2 TB of storage inside it, an HDMI output, a 10 gig USB output, cooling there on board, and allowed for even more connectivity. It was ultimately the first real docking station I could ever use with my mobile device. However, was it perfect? Sod no. When it arrived, the fact that it was pre-populated rubbed a lot of users, myself included, up the wrong way. And although it was a good idea in concept, there was definitely room for improvement, which brings us to today's video, which is the Disk Pro 2. Arguably every criticism I could find about this device answered. Firstly, the actual cable is now removable. So rather than the prefixed cable here, it allows you to use the cable that it arrives with, copper inside there at 10 gig USB, to attach it to it, or use any cable you ruddy bloody well like. But you may also have noticed there along the top, M.2 NVMe inside. It doesn't arrive pre-populated. You can use whatever SSD you like, and let's face it, in 2026 the SSD that you choose to use is hopefully not going to be extortionately expensive. Supporting 2280 and shorter SSDs inside, it has the cooling system still built in with the control management. It also arrives with additional connectivity there, so you've got the USB from the cable there alongside an HDMI out at either HDMI 2.0 or 2.1. It also arrives with a further 5 gig USB and the 10 gig USB, and alongside that a magnet kit to attach to the device either onto your desktop or your mobile device, much like the original but a little bit more refined there. Also arriving with SD card slots, SD3, again depending on if you go for the base or the ultra model. The light model, I haven't found much information on the SD card speed of those, but on the Ultra series you've got an SD3 micro and SD standard SD card slots built in there. All of this combined with a power delivery of up to 100 watts via USB-C and then an output of up to 80 watts for your connected desktop or mobile device. This allows not only 80 watts power pass-through to keep your devices charging when you need it, but also an additional 20 watts there to power other connected devices there. There's no shortage of power running through this, whether it is you're going to utilize it as just storage on the go or as that full docking station when you need to have a mobile deployment on the go. Not too shabby, with full control, if you choose to, of the USB mic whenever you need it, from powering the device down to having it up and running without the cooling and the active cooling. I will say there isn't a vast amount of space for any kind of heatsink there, and the top panel there is plastic, but the rear of the device is metal for that additional cooling, with the fan having slightly better ventilation running through it. And all of this on a device that's pretty much identical in size to its predecessor, although a wee bit thicker there. Now, early pricing on this, it is going to crowdfunding, so again, do keep that in mind. Also, right now, although the majority of Charge's crowdfunding has been successful when it's come to their storage devices, there is still looming questions about the Charge Lumos AI glasses, and if you check the recent updates on that, it does look like development-wise they have hit quite a lot of walls, and it looks like backers may be fleeing that one right now. But at least when it comes to their storage products and their battery products, I've still got confidence in this brand. Again, the standard light model is going to be rocking out at $49, and the Ultra series model that I've got here will be arriving at $69. Again, that is the early backing pricing, that's not the RRP, but nonetheless do keep in mind this is not traditional retail, this is crowdfunding. Crowdfunding has an element of risk. Now, in terms of performance, the performance of the SSD inside there wasn't too shabby. I saw it comfortably hitting around 960 to 970 read and write respectively in a repeated 1 gig Atto speed test, and at around 860 over 850 when it came to a repeated 1 gig AJA testing there. When I had a sort of weird cannibal mode when I had the drive connected with the older generation SSD connected via the 10 gig USB is there. I saw that the connected USB drive was hitting 850 to 860 as well, which would show, I think, that we are looking at a cap at the very least when it comes to AJA of sub 900 megabytes per second. Again, that was repeated sequential 1 gig synthetic testing. When I did the performance testing on the SD card slots there, that's an SD card at SD3, which should promote around a maximum 180 megabytes per second over 120 megabytes per second. In testing, with repeated testing on an SD card in either slot, I saw around 170 read over 100 megabytes per second write. So again, not too shabby numbers there on what I would expect. In terms of thermals and cooling, I will say, even under heavy duress, this drive, the temps were pretty darn good thanks to that fan. There is additional ventilation holes located around the edges of the chassis, but even with the fan there at its lowest setting, and it can go up to 10,000 RPM, I saw it only hitting around 42 to 44 degrees after about an hour. So again, pretty darn good numbers for a docking station with a standard class M.2 inside. The controller inside is a Realtek RTL9210CN. That is a controller we've seen on Thunderbolt external enclosures previously, but that does mean that the SSD inside there was never going to be oversaturating that 10 gig. Realistically, it's almost certainly sitting on 3x1 or 3x2 there inside. So again, the limitations of that bandwidth means that overheating wise, this is never really going to go nuts. That fan is really about this device going hell for leather with all the additional connections and of course the humidity and the climate that you are utilizing it in. The bottom line is this is a retweak and an improvement on the pre-existing Disc Pro. I'm going to keep using it, and it almost certainly is going to replace the existing Disc Pro that I've got in my possession. Yes, this has been sent to me by the brand, but I've already been utilizing the previous generation device pretty much since it arrived, and it is a device in this newer iteration that repairs the shortcomings and the failings and the limitations that the previous generation device had. And in that score, it can only be a win for me. The fact that the cable here arrives with is tailor-made and angled towards it and is a pretty high quality cable is a good thing. However, set your expectations to what they are. This isn't USB 4 or Thunderbolt connectivity. You're not going to see speeds exceeding 1 gigabit per second at any point. Also bear in mind that although it supports up to 8 TB drives and the pricing, which is bonkers out there already, is still going to be limited down internally to, again, 1 gigabit per second on a good day. And although I did some of my testing with Blackmagic and I seemed to get higher performance numbers, further investigation only really indicated to me that the upstream and the downstream on this is still going to be a massive limitation in real world utilization. And of course, bear in mind, this is going to crowdfunding and not traditional retail. So if you'd rather wait until it goes to normal retail like the other one did when it went on the likes of Amazon and more, you can do that. But if you're looking for a bargain now and you're looking for an unpopulated micro docking station, there aren't better options really in the market right now than this. But again, crowdfunding. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this video. I'm going to probably do a little bit more digging and testing on this because this year I've seen a lot of M.2 SSD external enclosures come to the scene, getting smaller and smaller, and although this is one of the smallest ones out there, I'll be interested to see how this compares against some of the options in the market from other established players going straight to normal retail. But if you are interested in getting hold of this, there's a link below over to their Kickstarter, which if it's not live soon, will be live very soon. And apart from that, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.